Hi, I'm Gareth, and in this video I'm going to answer a question that a number of people have asked us, and it's this: what might an accidental be telling us? Well, what do we mean by an accidental? Well, obviously we've got the accidentals that we have in key signatures. So in this piece of music here, there are 3 flats in the key signature. So they're telling us that the piece of music is in E flat major or in C minor. And if that doesn't make any sense to you, have a look at our video on the circle of fifths, which will explain to you exactly how key signatures work, how that would tell you that you're in E flat major or in C minor, and it tells us a wealth of other stuff really worth getting to grips with the circle of fifths. So we have accidentals in the key signature at the beginning of a piece of music, but sometimes accidentals bob up during the course of a piece, like you see this one here. Why have I got an A natural here? Well, there's an A flat in the key signature, so we're expecting all the A's to be flat unless we're told otherwise. Well, here we're told play an A natural. And then in this one, we're in the key of D major with 2 sharps, but there's a B flat here, there's an E sharp there. What are they doing there, for goodness sake? This one, we've got a key signature of 2 flats. Well, the circle of fifths will tell us that we're in B flat major or in G minor. And that's useful actually, because when we come to look at this, we'll see why it might be in B flat major or in G minor. And then you come across things like this in the middle of a piece of music. Believe it or not, I've lifted 3 chords that might be used in the key of C major. And some of you will be saying straight away, well, hang on, that can't be right, because in C major, there are no sharps and no flats. That is absolutely true in terms of the key signature, but sometimes we have chords that do use sharps and flats. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to try and explain what an accidental might be telling us in different contexts. Now, in one case, it might be about modulation. Modulation means that we're changing from one key to another. And lots of pieces of music that are just all in the same key, I have to say, are rather boring. And it's modulation that makes it sound exciting if we can move from one key to another. So in this very short extract here, we begin in the key of E flat major, flagged up by these 3 flats. But in the second half of these 4 bars, we introduce an A natural, and that A natural is played there and it's played again there, because remember, there's a rule about accidentals that says wherever you have an accidental, it carries on for the rest of the bar at the same pitch. So if this A natural recurred up here, then it wouldn't be A natural, it would be A flat. But because it's at the same pitch, this one's A natural as well. And this bar line would cancel your A natural. But yeah, we've got 3 flats here, E flat major, and towards the end of this, we lose the A flat because the A flat becomes A natural. And then we finish on a B flat. Well, if we take 1 flat away from here, B flat and E flat, the circle of fifths will tell us we're in B flat major. So in other words, this is an example of a modulation, of a key change. It starts in E flat major and it finishes off in B flat major. Now, for those of you who are into all this modulation stuff, that represents a modulation to the dominant key. So, and if you look at this, if I take the A flat away, I've just got 2 flats left. So I've moved 1 key away from E flat major on the circle of fifths to B flat major. So it's something that composers do all the time. So what does this modulation sound like then? So here we are. This is the chord of E flat major, and the scale of E flat major goes like this. So I'm using these 3 flats in the key signature to play you that scale. So now you've got your ear into E flat major. Have a listen to this and hear how the first 2 bars sit very comfortably in that key of E flat major. And then you hear this A natural and you think, oh, that doesn't seem to belong to the key of E flat major. Well, no, that's because we're modulating. We're changing key to B flat major. So you can hear that we've moved from one key to another by using that A natural. So One place in which we're going to find accidentals during the course of a piece of music is when we're modulating, changing key. Okay, here's another place. Chromatic inessential notes. My goodness, that sounds a bit complicated. Well, we've got various kinds of things that we call inessential notes. Inessential notes, well, if you think about it, it means they're not essential. So essential notes are notes that belong to the chord. So if I put down a chord of C major, C, E, G, and I have a tune that uses those notes in any order I like, then that's fine. These are all essential notes. But I could tuck in a few notes that don't belong to the chord of C major, and they're called inessential notes. So if I go from C to E over that chord of C major, but I tuck a D in between, that D is called a passing note. Or maybe if I play C, go up to D and come back to C again, that D is called an upper auxiliary note. Or if I go C, nip down to B next door and come back to C, that's a lower auxiliary note. So these things sound terribly technical, but actually they're not too complicated. A chromatic inessential note is when you're doing one of these things like a passing note or an auxiliary note, but actually you're using a note that doesn't quite belong to the key. So let's have a look at this example. Two sharps, F sharp and C sharp. The circle of fifths tells us we're in D major or in B minor. Well, let me tell you, we're in D major. One or two clues. It starts on D and it finishes on D, though that wouldn't always be the case. It goes D, F sharp, A, which spells out the tonic triad or chord 1 in D major. So that's all telling us we're in D major. But we look through and we think, what on earth is B flat doing there? Well, if you look at it, B flat could be one of these upper auxiliary notes, because I've got A, especially if A belongs to the chord. If I went up to B and then came back to A, B would be an upper auxiliary note. But because I've gone to B flat, which doesn't belong to the key, I call that a chromatic upper auxiliary note. And then later on here, look, we've got a chromatic lower auxiliary note, because I've got F sharp there, I've got F sharp here. I should have just dipped down from F sharp to E back to F sharp to stay in the key, but I've gone F sharp, E sharp, F sharp. So you see what's happening there. So chromatic inessential notes. If we're using a passing note or an auxiliary note, for example, but we're just deciding to colour the music by using an accidental that doesn't belong to the key, then it could be that that explains what the accidental is telling us. So you see why I'm flagging this up, because you could look at this and think, oh, I wonder if this means I'm modulating somewhere. Well, it might do, as it does here. But this time, the whole piece is in the key of D major, but we've got these chromatic inessential notes. So this is how this might sound. So you can hear they're quite colourful notes, aren't they? But that's why composers use them. It adds a bit of spice to the melody, doesn't it? Not quite so predictable by using those chromatic inessential notes. Now, the third thing is it could be telling us something much more obvious, like the piece of music is in a minor key. Now, if you're looking at a key signature and you're thinking, well, let's look at this case. It's got two flats, B flat and E flat. And if either you just know your key signatures or you're looking at the circle of fifths, you'll know that two flats mean we're either in B flat major or we're in G minor. Now, how do we know? Well, we might have this sort of clue like we said here, didn't we? Well, it starts on D and it finishes on D, so maybe it's in D major. Look at this one, starts on G, finishes on G. So is it more likely to be B flat major or G minor? Well, that perhaps suggests G minor. You see these first three notes? I've purposely spelled it out, the first four notes really, all spelling out the tonic chord of G minor. So all that is saying G minor. But the thing that's really saying G minor to us is F sharp here, E natural, F sharp there. Now, how do I know that that's a minor key and it's not a modulation and it's not using chromatic inessential notes? Well, if I'm in a minor key, in the harmonic minor, I expect the seventh note to be raised. So in G minor, the seventh note is F. If I raise it, I get F sharp. Oh, F sharp, F sharp. If I'm in a melodic minor scale, when I go up the scale, I raise the 6th degree by a semitone and the 7th degree by a semitone. So G minor, what's the 6th degree? It's E flat. Got a few E flats around there. We've got one there anyway. Here we've got E natural, so that's a raised 6. And of course the F sharps we've talked about are the raised 7th. If you're coming down the melodic minor scale, you don't raise the 6th and the 7th degree. So you might even be looking at a piece thinking, well, that's a bit strange. You know, I've got E natural there and I've got E flat here. You might even find you've got F sharp somewhere and F natural somewhere else. That's because it's using a bit of a mixture of the melodic minor scale. But when you look at that, you know, you might be tempted to look at this F sharp and think, that's one of these chromatic lower auxiliary notes, because there's a G, it's gone down one and it's come back. But actually, in this case, we're in the key of G minor, so that belongs to the key. And at the end, we're using the ascending form of a melodic minor scale. So that's why this is telling you, the accidentals are telling you that you're in a minor key. So what does that one sound like? And you can hear that minor tonality coming through. Okay, and the fourth thing that I'm going to illustrate in this video is this idea of chromatic chords. Now we have chromatic chords like the diminished 7th. It's when you take chord 7 in a key. So if I'm in C major, I take chord 7, B, D, F, and I stick a minor third on the top of it, A flat. Now A flat's not in the key of C major, is it? But nevertheless, it forms a diminished 7th. So this first one is a diminished 7th. I've just spread it out across 4 parts, just so you can sort of spot what it might look like. So that's in the key of C major, but that A flat is not telling me about any of these things. That A flat is saying, actually, you're in C major, but this is a diminished 7th. We also have chords called the augmented 6 chords there, the Italian 6, the French 6, the German 6. Here's an example of a German 6 chord. And a German 6 chord in C major, it's got an A flat in it, an E flat in it, an F sharp in it. Oh my goodness. Well, again, we've got a video out there that explains all these augmented 6 chords. So if you want to know about them, have a look at that video. But this sounds like this. And you're thinking, well, I'm looking at F sharp, E flat, A flat, I'm hearing that. What on earth has that got to do with C major? Well, if I play a piece in C major, I can be tiddling along quite happily in C major, minding my own business. And then I can do this. There's that chord. And then I can carry on in C major. So do you see, it's not doing any of these things. It's doing one of these things. And the last example of that is what we call a Neapolitan chord. So if I'm in C major, I take chord 2. And then I'm going to lower the root of that chord, D to D flat. I'm going to lower the 5th. So I end up with a major chord built on the flattened 2nd degree of the scale. Normally goes in first inversion. There we are, a Neapolitan chord. And believe it or not, even with D flat, it's an A flat. That ends up being a chromatic chord, but in the key of C major. So again, I could be in C major. Nothing untoward going on there. And then here's a Neapolitan. And then I just carry on in C major. So you see how those chromatic chords give it colour. So you'll find other videos out there on chromatic chords that we've made. We've done a bit of work on minor keys. We've done a bit of work on inessential notes. We've done a bit of work on modulation. But this is just really focused on this question. What might an accidental be telling us? So if you're trying to analyze a piece of music and you're trying to work all this stuff out, when you see accidentals, have a think. Which of these areas do those accidentals seem to fall in? And when you're playing music, it's quite handy to know what's going on, so you know how to use these little colouring notes, for example, or how to flag up a slight rising of the emotional temperature when we have a modulation, for example, or maybe just to take a little bit of time and paint these chromatic chords. So knowing what's going on in your playing is very useful. And if you're composing, writing, arranging, knowing all these little tricks will just add that extra colour and spice to your writing. So there we are. What might an accidental be telling us?